Well, hello everyone, and welcome to part two of the webinar that we're hosting today. Welcome if you're new, welcome back if you were here for part one. We'd like to start off by thanking everyone for joining us as we continue to review and discuss this groundbreaking research on driving a diverse extended workforce. My name is Rachael Jarvis-Bossard. I'm a partner success manager here at the Mom Project. And I've got a powerhouse team with me today. So we have some representation not only from the Mom Project, but also we have Pam Cohen from WerkLabs, the research division of the Mom Project, Chandra Saunders from RISE, which is our not-for-profit branch of the Mom Project focused on upskilling and reskilling moms and women of color. And we have Rebecca Peralt from Peralt Unlimited, a leading MSP focused on D&I and the extended workforce. Welcome, everyone. We are so happy to continue this conversation. Now, before we dive in, I'd like to take a moment to let each of you introduce yourselves and your respective organizations.
Thanks, Rachel. I'd be happy to kick us off. I'm Pam Cohen with WerkLabs. I am the Chief Research and Analytics Officer. My area is social psychology and behavioral economics. I find ways to measure intangibles. And I've been with the Mom Project since it started almost 6 years ago now. When we were a team of about 5 people, and as we've grown, Mom Project has continued to prioritize investing in research and analytics, and we now have a very robust research team and are thrilled to be talking to you about the contingent labor research that we've done with Pro today.
Thank you, Pam. Chandra, you can go next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Chandra Sanders. I am the director of RISE at momproject.org. I am currently on a mission to create economic opportunities for mothers and women of color by transforming their lives, by creating pathways for them to upskill and connecting them with companies that value and want to bring working mothers and want to bring women of color into their workplace. So again, with RISE, we are currently on a mission to upskill at least 10,000 women by the end of next year. And I am happy to be here.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rebecca Peralt. I lead diversity, equity, and inclusion at Pro Unlimited. In my role, I work to develop our internal diversity, equity, and inclusion as an organization, as well as leading our service offering, Pro Unites. And Pro Unlimited is in a really exciting position to be able to influence and enable diversity, equity, and inclusion in the external workforce. As a company, we offer services, technology, and software that help our clients support their external workforce program. So it's an exciting place to be in, and looking forward to the discussion today and this really unique research that's going to impact the contingent workforce.
Awesome. Thank you. Really excited. And I have the pleasure of introducing the Mom Project. For those of you who don't know us, the Mom Project is a story of girl meets corporate America and then decides to have a family and realizes, oh my gosh, there's so much more to do here as it pertains to how businesses look at women and moms and support them in the workforce. So for those of you that are new to the Mom Project, we are a leading platform for moms to discover and unlock their economic potential. We serve our communities of over 650,000 moms, dads, and allies, and we partner with over 3,000 companies on that initiative. All right, so before we let these experts take it away on today's topic, I would like to touch on some housekeeping and then provide a bit more context for our conversation. This session is being recorded and will be sent out to all registered attendees after the event, so you can look forward to that. And we will also be sending out a copy of the What Drives a Diverse Extended Workforce final report with all the findings that we discussed here today. And there'll also be a link for a brief survey about today's panel, so please take a minute to fill that out so we can better present your webinar experiences in the future. And we will save some time for Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions that you'd like answered, drop them in the chat box. We do have someone monitoring that, and we hope to get to your questions at the end. Now, setting the stage for the rest of our conversation, we presented findings about a month ago looking at what motivates professionals to work on a contingent basis, and then also what drives positive, inclusive work experiences. In that conversation, we set the stage for what matters to the extended workforce. And as a recap, we uncovered that equity, success, trust, respect, support, and belonging were the identified drivers. Today, we're going to take a closer look into these drivers and how they differ in terms of their importance across demographic segments, so that we as organizations and MSPs can understand more specifically how to power diverse contingent talent. We have WerkLabs to talk us through research findings, Pro to provide us with insights on the role of MSPs and what they're doing to drive diverse contingent talent. And we also have Rise here to talk about how contingent work is particularly relevant to its mission and why powering diverse contingent talent is critical. Chandra, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi again. I am a huge fan of contingent work, of project-based work, because it has literally propelled my career in a direction, in a space that I would have never had otherwise if it weren't for me taking on some contingent work earlier in my career. I started off my career many years ago as a high school Spanish teacher, but made a few pivots, transitions to ultimately leading product development at multiple Fortune 100 companies. And that is because I took a chance on contingent work. I took a chance on a 6-month contract at the leading high-tech company in Silicon Valley to really put myself in a position, someone who is a woman of color, breaking into a new industry, pivoting without true high-tech experience. I was able to transform my life, transform my career, transform the trajectory of my family's lives by taking on project-based work. So this is what we're doing with Rise. We are currently transforming the lives of these ladies who are currently pivoting, have been out of the workforce for a little bit, have possibly taken a career pause, or really need to find flexible opportunities. And those opportunities are honestly in tech and other emergent industries. And the way to really break into those industries, which is proven by what I have done for myself, is through contingent work. It allows for you to get in, get some experience, get some credibility under your belt with a major company, more than likely. Also get in, see, learn the ropes, see the experiences, build networks of people that you probably wouldn't have had before, gain mentors to help you progress. But also one thing that is very attractive, which continues to attract me with project-based work, is you're doing this with no strings attached. Right. And I feel like that is honestly one of the most attractive qualities about project-based work, about contingent work, is that you're in there with a contract and then you can leave if you want. Or more than likely, if you're going there and you're doing a great job, you will be asked to stay. So I was able to take my 6-month contract at one of the best tech companies out there. And I turned that, connected me to another company, Cognizant, who ultimately provided me with a full-time opportunity. And I was able to continue on as a senior consultant at multiple Fortune 100 companies only because I took that one chance on myself. I took one chance on a 6-month contract. And I am trying to do those exact same things with these ladies who are currently pivoting and transitioning through Rise, who need that credibility, who need that experience fast-tracked. And we are already seeing great success with women who don't have much previous experience, but now have certifications and are getting contracts at top companies such as Google, such as Meta, such as Reddit, such as Etsy. And so I believe that contingent-based work is proven beneficial for me, but it's also continuing to prove beneficial for the women in the Rise community.
Well, you've inspired me, Chandra. I'm excited to talk about this more.
I apologize. It seems I put myself on mute. I'd like to dive a little bit in there, thank you, Chandra, on how we connected to Pam with how your team teamed up with Rise and other participants in finding out more about upskilling and reskilling, and how do we leverage these people in our community and support them.
Sure, absolutely. I'm really happy to talk through that. And yeah, I'm absolutely inspired by Chandra's story. So, we got data from two different populations. We talked to RISE participants, current, and those who had already graduated from the programs, and then those who are contingent workers across the board. And for each of these populations to start to emerge key findings about what it would take to keep them satisfied in these roles, to make them happy in these roles, and sometimes to move on to other full-time roles as well. We began with interviewing. We use an open-ended, semi-structured approach so that we can really be very conversational about our discussion, so we can bring up themes that we think will be important, but actually allow people to bring up ideas that might be important to them that weren't otherwise uncovered. For RISE participants, we really interviewed them about motivations, on what they were looking for, where they wanted opportunities to upskill, and how they were going about that. And also we heard a lot about the pain points being faced by RISE participants, and we'll talk more about that as we get into this. But there are, quite a few obstacles to overcome, and we heard about determination and grit in getting through these programs. For contingent workers more generally, we similarly heard about what drove them to contingent work and what they were missing, what they were desiring to feel more included in their work and feel more satisfied overall. After that, we then fielded a survey based on those results to empirically test those results. One went to RISE participants and one went to contingent workers more broadly. And from that, we analyzed those results. And in talking through our results on the extended workforce today, we'll talk about the scores, what do the scores mean, and really each driver impacting the contingent work experience is made up of several items or indicators that group together to explain or to define a construct. That will come together as we talk about that. And for the purposes of today, being here with RISE and PRO, and we're all working to build a more diverse and inclusive workplace, we really wanted to call out specific instances and drivers that really matter to driving the contingent work experiences of diverse employees.
Thank you. I mean, just talk about belonging, which we will. This feels like such a personalized approach in really understanding this segment of our workforce and how we can support them. And I'm just really excited that we're taking the time to really look at this. So in part one of the series, Rebecca, you introduced the life cycle of the contingent worker, and stage one being motivating factors for pursuing contingent work. What's motivating moms and women of color to sign up for RISE? And similarly, what's motivating professionals to pursue contingent work? Chandra, I'll start off with you from the RISE aspect, and then Rebecca can talk about what drives professionals to contract work.
What's motivating RISE community to look at contract work, right? Number one, the economic opportunity, right? There is great economic opportunity in contract work. And if this is something that you continue to do, then you really can change the trajectory of your life. But also not just the economic opportunity, right? These ladies really are unemployed. And they're looking to get in, get some experience that is unrelated to what they've done in the past, right? And so they are looking for new fields. They're looking for new industries. They're looking to use the new skills, such as UX design, such as data analytics. They're looking to put these skills to good use. And the benefit of contingent workforce is honestly like you're thrown in the fire and you're either going to sink or swim. And honestly, that's what I love about it. And so there's a lot of things that you can learn in those types of situations. And I think that these ladies are really ready to get in, learn something new, but not just that, get the economic opportunity and increase and influence that comes along with it.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, Chandra. There's so much opportunity that's available in the contingent workforce, right? These inherently, because they're shorter term, because you start immediately, there is this ability to gain that experience and to try something new. But there's also some other factors that are driving people to the contingent workforce. And a lot is about flexibility, that ability to work remotely, the need to be able to adjust schedules are really some drivers that we think about in the contingent workforce space, that you're allowed a little bit more of that freedom. But similarly to what you just mentioned is the need for full-time employment. And sometimes we forget this aspect when we think about the contingent workforce, but one of the drivers is the step in, right? You have a foothold into the organization, like your story, Chandra, that you're able to get that experience, get the foot in the door, hoping for a full-time role eventually. And as a managed service provider, as an MSP, and as we're providing our clients with advice, we really work with them to say, how can we provide transparency into how to get full-time roles? How do you as a company develop a talent brand for that? That it's not guaranteed, right? That's not what we're asking for. That's not even what these contingent workers and this talent is asking for, but knowing that there can be a path, that this is possible, and having the network available to you. So some of those networking opportunities, transparency to open roles can really be one of those drivers of a contingent worker picking a certain role.
Yeah, and we're seeing that more. And the more I work with Pro, we see that they're using that contingent workforce as a feeder pool for their FTE workforce. So definitely kind of leveraging that and being in that space allows you that opportunity, like Rebecca said,
Yeah.
to be
And
visible, have those roles.
And I'll add to that, Rachael, by saying that we see it even more as a driver in the survey results for our Black and Latin workers, that they are really looking for those permanent roles rather than staying in the contingent workforce long term. And I know we'll touch on that a little more later, but just wanting to point out where we see some differences in the survey results.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, in part one of the series, we identified that flexibility, like you mentioned, Rebecca, has certainly become a priority for professionals over the course of this pandemic. Pam, can we talk more about this flexibility and the need for that in the context of our conversation today?
Sure, absolutely. And we could have Chandra speak more to the need of flexibility, in particular to RISE participants. But in our own research for RISE, when we were conducting the interviews, we had many people talking to us about how the fact that RISE is a self-paced program is critical because it allowed so much for much needed flexibility. And then regarding the extended workforce, we see that gaining flexibility is a significantly greater motivating factor to work on a project by project basis for those who are parents or caregivers than those who aren't. And we also see that much more enhanced for females than for males as well, who more greatly value the ability to work remotely or from a location of their choice, schedule-related flexibility, for example, and also autonomy in how work gets done.
Chandra?
Yeah, honestly, flexibility is so important. And just like Pam said, it's not just for moms, it's working parents, it's for caregivers. And honestly, at this point, in the space that we are in the pandemic, flexibility is important for everyone. However, especially for moms, right? Especially for our RISE graduates. Like I have a story of a RISE graduate who was working for the state. I won't say what state, but she was working for the state. All right. And so she was, you know, of course they were working from home during the pandemic. However, 6 months ago, she was forced to return back to the office. Forced. And so you're forcing these ladies to go back into the office. They still have to take care of their kids who are still getting sick. Schools are still closing, right? And then also now she has to take care of her husband and like there's errands to run and she just could not manage. However, due to her upskilling with RISE, she was able to quit that job because she secured another job working 100% remote with flexibility, able to manage her schedule. So flexibility is 100% important, especially for our RISE community who are caregivers, who just need that flexibility, honestly, for your mental health as well at this point, because of all the caregiving responsibilities that we have, especially because many of us are single parents. We need to be able to have that flexibility, really maintain our lives and not have to choose between either taking care of a family or earning an income.
Yeah, and I mean, I definitely switched jobs in the pandemic. I also became a mom in the pandemic, and Geez, my needs as a single person and as a mom are completely different, and I definitely value flexibility and, like Pam said, work autonomy, knowing that I can get my job done, but I do have some flexibility if my kid gets sick, if I have to pick her up, if there's an early closure. Like those are the things that really factor into work and life and that balance. So really important. Um, so off the bat, contingent work may align more with the motivations of those upskilling and reskilling, especially for professionals who are caregivers. Now, what might motivate different demographics to different projects and opportunities, Pam?
Well, really, there's two categories of project appeal factors that make some contracts more appealing than others. We call them threshold and consideration. So the threshold factors are really comprised of things that would be an ante to get in the game. Competitive pay, for example, but also employee supportiveness. Those are minimum requirements to consider a contract. So competitive pay, by the way, is really valued by both male and female respondents as the most important factor, but employee supportiveness is valued to a much greater degree by female respondents. And that means that the employer is aware of other needs and the idea that a contract employee also needs to be part of the team, needs to feel wanted, and needs to feel respected within the organization. That doesn't mean that that's not important to men, but particularly females feel that much more acutely. Consideration factors are really comprised of career growth opportunities and also the potential for full-time employment, which many contingent workers are eventually seeking. Those are more of the nice to haves that serve to distinguish contracts from one another when evaluating different options. So in other words, they're not absolutely critical to accepting, but they certainly do make a difference. Career growth opportunities are interestingly valued by Asian professionals more than their white counterparts and by female respondents more than male respondents. For full-time employment opportunities, Black respondents really valued these more than their white peers as well. That opportunity to then, roll into a full-time opportunity, with the security that comes with that as well.
Yeah, and Pam, I'll add onto that to say some of those nice to haves is the work that companies are doing to progress diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging in their organizations. And contingent workers are looking at what those organizations are doing for their full-time staff, and they're starting to see what are you actually doing for the contingent workforce as well. So specifically for some of these workers, when they're looking at different project opportunities, that's a decision-making factor. And we see that it is greatest in our research with the Asian populations as well as Black contingent workers. And so we really want to make sure we understand that this has an impact on who is looking and who is choosing roles.
I can go here.
Chandra, you want to talk about? Yeah, go ahead.
So, the ladies who are in the RISE program, about half of them are unemployed because they were either laid off during the pandemic or had to choose. So these ladies are coming to this program to pursue a certification that's really going to set themselves up to win, put them in position to win. And winning includes earning higher wages, being able to work on your terms, flexible work considerations, but also being able to grow. Right? The pandemic had a disproportionate impact on women of color. All right, and I'll throw myself in there as well. So we don't want that to happen again. So we're coming here for an opportunity. We're coming here to help align or to align with the Mom Project, align with our partners, align with a company that can really put us in position to win, right? Help us earn additional income, help us take care of our families, connect us with companies who want to provide that work-life integration, right? And we hear all the time about contingent work, the benefits, but many contingent companies are offering benefits now, which is a game changer, right? So some people may want to continue working contingent work for as long as they can. You're getting paid very well. And you can hop from different contracts to contracts, companies to companies, and continue to build your resume and earn yourself and build your income. right? And so these ladies are here to pursue a certification, to align with the Mom Project, partner with the Mom Project, to truly put themselves in position to win, especially after the pandemic.
Yeah, it's awesome. And the more that we talk about we're seeing our workforce, and Rebecca, you're working with diversity and inclusion, we're seeing equity enter that conversation. And our research has identified that it is a top driver for this segment of the workforce. For contingent workers, equity is determined in three primary ways: having the opportunities given to them in work, being communicated with by organizations and colleagues with transparency, and receiving fair and sincere treatment from others. Pam, can you tell us more about these findings?
Yeah, equity was one of those that we knew was going to be important. It's important to everybody. But what was interesting, again, as we looked at diverse contingent workers, Black contingent workers placed a particularly high and significant emphasis on equity, above a 90, followed closely by Hispanic and Latino contingent workers. And then female contingent workers rated equity at about a 87 as being critical and significantly higher than male counterparts at about an 82. Now, that could be because male counterparts tended to consider that an ante to get in the game as well, which we might suspect. These findings are really important, but not necessarily surprising for us at WerkLabs, where we know really the importance of having equal and inclusive hiring practices is absolutely critical. Key to everybody for advancing organizations, key for diverse employees. So it's no surprise here that we see this needed to be applied to the extended workforce as well.
How about equity from a RISE standpoint, Chandra? How is that factor in, and how is that important to those participants?
Due to everything that happened in 2020 with George Floyd, companies are changing the way they are looking at diverse candidates. They want to invite diverse candidates. And what we're doing here with RISE is truly trying to infiltrate those spaces that we have been historically left out of. So these ladies are coming to RISE. They want to get in. They want to be with a company that values them. They want to be heard. I can't tell you how many times I've been in a space where I had to hide the fact that I was a Black woman, hide the fact that I was a mom, hide parts of who I am. And it's just not where we are today. We are really trying to shape the potential future state of the workplace. And that is about equity for everyone. So these ladies are coming here because they know that the Mom Project is committed to equity. They know that anybody that we partner with is committed to equity. And I'm always on a roadshow talking about equity, what to look at in a diverse candidate, what to look at in a candidate who's pivoting, because we're not going to fit a job description 100%. But if you really want to invite diversity and equity into your workforce, then you have to kind of massage your hiring practices and look at these candidates holistically. And that's what we've been able to do so far with RISE. And we're seeing already great results of women who are pivoting and being hired in contingent workspaces with no questions asked, because people are taking a chance because they truly want to provide diversity and equity to their workplace.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, because what you were just saying, Chandra, makes me think about one of the quotes that we got from our research. And so I'll read it really quickly, and then we can talk about it a little bit. But the line can be blurred if organizations treat me like a regular permanent employee, when there are aspects when I am clearly not. However, on a personal level, anytime someone is treated with care and empathy for whatever situation, work, career, personal, etc., I believe you feel included. And to me, what this brings up is something that I talk to clients a lot about, is they understand, maybe too much, the co-employment risks and the co-employment laws that exist. And so they get scared to start on this D&I journey with the contingent workforce, even though they want to, right? So they want to, they're bought in, as Chandra, as you said, but they're nervous about this. And what this quote tells me is that contingent workers don't want to be equal. They don't want to have exactly the same things as their full-time counterparts, but they want to be treated with, they want to have that equity. They want to be treated with respect. They want to know that they're well paid for the work that they do. They want to know that they have the ability to succeed in their roles. And so if organizations think about it in that way, it's about making sure you work with the right partners. Organizations like RISE, like the Mom Project, that are in this to provide the contingent workers with these people and this talent with really good benefits and support systems, so where these workers are provided with that equity of experience.
Thank you, Rebecca. And you'd mentioned the need to feel like you have the opportunity to succeed as part of being included. And that is our second driver for the contingent workforce. Success and the feeling of success rated very high. And we discussed metrics of success in part one, being given more responsibility, having contract renewed. Pam, can you elaborate on what these feelings of success or what success can look like in the contingent space?
Yeah, it's certainly gaining more responsibility and work contributes a lot to feelings of success, but it's a real fine balance because a continued increase in responsibility that goes beyond the initial scope of a project, what we call scope creep, can also lead to feelings of discouragement and being taken advantage of. We really see this a lot in part-time work where someone is hired for a 10-hour work week, but they're doing 20 to 40 hours worth of work, just trying to squeeze it in. It tends to become full-time very quickly. One contingent worker said to us, same pay, but more and more responsibility after years is discouraging. So there needs to be that balance there. The companies think that the work a contingent worker is doing great, so they add to the responsibility, but then they also add to the pay or they add to the timeline that they have to do work. While all view success as important in contingent work, feeling successful is of greatest importance to women as well, scoring about an 85. And again, this doesn't mean it's not important to men, but oftentimes those extra indicators of success are particularly important to women.
Yeah, and indeed, there's a fine line between I see and value the work that you're doing. How do we reassess your position? And here's more responsibility without discussion, right? So open communication and trust, which is our third key driver for experiences of contingent workers. Not feeling trusted to do the job that they're often brought in to do is a key barrier. Who is trust more important to, Chandra?
Trust is more important to the worker. If I trust you, I'm going to do my job. If I distrust you, I'm going to be looking for a way out.
Yep. Yeah, and I'll add, I think you're exactly right, Chandra, right? The workers need to feel that trust from their immediate manager, from the company as a whole. And we see some differences in the research on what demographic groups are feeling about that trust aspect. So we really have been seeing some particularly high responses from the Hispanic and Latin groups at high 80s. I think it was 87%. And for Black contingent workers, we saw 87% as well. So really that feelings of trust in work are a high importance for some of these people of color as well as for women contingent workers. Mm-hmm. So we see that much higher than their male counterparts. So thinking about some of the things you mentioned before, Chandra, of all of these different pressures that you have, knowing that you have trust perhaps the organization has in you to say, yeah, I'm gonna maybe go pick up my child, but I'm gonna get my work done. So even though I might be gone at 3, I'll be back on at 4, or if I have to, I'll be back on at 6 or 7 and get that work done. And we know that there's this mutual trust. But I'll say that trust is hard. It's not something like, oh, yeah, let's snap our fingers and have some trust. And so it's something that we have to work on. And even more so when you're thinking about contingent workers, because there might not be this long-term bond that you're able to think about for trust. You think about your personal relationships. It takes a time to build trust. And so how can we do that? When I'm working with organizations, we are thinking about from an organization level, right? So this big level, how do we have communication? I think Rachael, you mentioned communication earlier. Communication, transparency, right? We all understand what our roles are, and that allows us to have more trust. And then poor managers, right? Everything's on our poor managers. So managers, that's really where the rubber hits the road in this of creating the trust. Does that manager give the responsibility and the freedom to that person and then know that it's going to get done? So I'd say there's this kind of give and take there for that manager. And for the organizations and organizations like Pro, like mine, how do we help support those managers, right? Because everything's on them. So are we giving them the education? Are we giving them the tools? Are we providing them with the right language to be able to speak to their workers and build that trust? So all of these pieces are so essential and complex to building this very important piece of trust for the workers and for the organization.
Yeah, and part of trust is a mutual respect, right? I respect my job enough to know that I am asking for time to step away, but I will come back, right? So it is, like you say, that give and take of them trusting you, respecting the job, and that is a driver for us. Respect is a universal need. It applies to all professionals, including those who are temporary. It's like everybody wants it. Does everybody get it? Pam, despite being a universal, some groups may need a little greater level of trust than others. Can you talk to us about what you found pertaining respect in your research?
Yeah, really giving contingent workers the opportunity to showcase their skills, recognizing work contributions, and listening to their voices and opinions most strongly contribute to their feeling respected. We see that Hispanic, Latino workers, and female contingent workers report the greatest importance on feeling respected in their work. And again, oftentimes this comes because there has been felt a lack of that before. So it's not that other contingent workers don't want respect. It's just that they may not have felt it as much in their work, and so the need to feel it is much more critical to them.
Got it. Any thoughts, Chandra?
No, I think Pam said it all. Just to reiterate, you need the trust, but you also need the respect on both sides to truly build the relationship and to continue to have, be productive and then learn and to keep going. So trust is extremely important, but respect is even more so. It kind of feeds into each other.
Respect is the minimum. Okay.
Yeah, right. Yes. Yeah, and I can add to that about how sometimes support and respect is felt through for the contingent workforce, right? Because it's different than for full-time workers, and a lot of times it's really through feedback on the strengths of the project work. And that piece that we heard in the research really aligns with that separation that's needed to mitigate co-employment risks. And I keep bringing this up because it's something that we hear from clients and organizations a lot. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't start on this journey. You can't give contingent workers what they want and what they need to be successful while still mitigating these risks. So feedback on the role, on the job, on the task can really help with that piece. It can really help mitigate those co-employment risks.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. That feedback plays so well into support. Whatever kind of feedback is, you're supporting your contingent worker in their journey so that they can use that to feel driver number 2, success, and how all these things tie in together. Rebecca might walk us through what supporting the extended workforce. I know in part 1, we talked about maybe not regular FTE ERGs, but a contingent ERG and all this kind of things that we can put in place to support our contingent workforce, and how important is that with co-employment risk factored in?
Yeah, I think that support we all want, right? Every single one of us, like you said, whether it's in our personal lives or in our work. And we are seeing some really clear differences that emerge for how important this is across different demographic groups. So we see that white contingent workers are placing really a particularly high emphasis on support at about over 80%. And then followed by our Hispanic and Latin contingent workers. Really all identified drivers of support are the greatest differences really emerge across male and female contingent workers. And some of that I think really plays into what Chandra, you were mentioning when you mentioned kind of having to hide that you were a woman of color, that you were a mom. I have done the same thing in my past careers of never mention that I have a child, because who knows whether I'm going to get the job then. And so we're starting to see that change, but it makes sense that we're still seeing that support is more important to female contingent workers than it is to men, because they really need that support for who they are. Nope, I think you're on mute, Rachel.
I live next to a train track. I will let you know that. And it's always fun because you never know what's going to happen. So we all want support and belonging, right? Part of our support is knowing that you value me, you value that I'm here, and I belong. But I'll bring it up again. I think this is the fourth time there's co-employment law for how we belong and how it's really felt by contingent workers. Pam, can you walk us through some of this research? And then I think Chandra and Rebecca, you can both kind of highlight what that belonging means and how it's valued for the contingent workforce.
Yeah, sure. Interesting items like the organization's values and also beliefs and the extent to which contingent workers are aligned on those really contributes to a sense of belonging. And that's an interesting discovery, because we might typically think that it's a factor more so for permanent employees than for temporary. But despite belonging being the driver with the lowest rating among all contingent workers, which is around a 68, which is still pretty high, separately, both Black and Hispanic and Latino workers from 98 to 90 respectively, contingent professionals place the greatest importance on belonging compared to all other drivers. So from that, we really see that this sense of belonging is a noticeably different and distinguishing factor to impact the contingent work experience, feeling like they're part of the organization and feeling like the organization values them. It's just so critical.
And just from my experience in the contingent workspaces and experiences of others that I know who are a part or have been a part of, honestly, the belonging piece, it depends on your manager. It depends on your organization. I had an amazing experience of someone who took me under their wing, guided me, provided me with tools that I needed to be successful that I literally still use today. However, I know other people who were on different teams, same company, who didn't get that and had a horrible, horrible experience. So honestly, it just depends on that manager. If they believe in equity and inclusion, I know in some places you may have different color badges, so you're automatically placed outside of the line. However, you know, it just depends on the manager. It depends on the culture. But yes, there are some differences with belonging, and some things that you actually can't get over. But with the right manager, with the right team, you can feel like you belong and you don't feel excluded. So it just depends on the team and that manager.
Yeah, and I'll add, I think, as I mentioned before, I completely agree that the manager has so much impact on this. But I do think that organizations can set it up to where it's a culture and it's a place that can enable belonging for contingent workers. And so as we advise our clients, we are working to take a look at differences of experience within the different demographic groups in the organization. So utilizing technology to see perhaps who's leaving contracts early. Do we have more women leaving contracts earlier than men, so that we know where to double click and where to analyze and where to actually put in interventions and changes because of that data. And then also on kind of the softer side, how can we can obviously help our clients work with organizations like RISE and the Mom Project, but then that's still dependent on the different suppliers, these different groups that are finding the talent. As our organization, we can bring all of those people together as contingent workers to provide them with education on diversity, equity, and inclusion, so that regardless of their demographic groups, they're able to contribute to these cultures that our clients are trying to build. We can provide them with the opportunity to network with each other, fight isolation. If perhaps there's only one woman in this group and one woman in this group, they can come together as not just women, but contingent workers and discuss their experience, kind of discuss how, Chandra, if you were part of that group, you could share about how you utilized this as a leg in, right? How you changed your career trajectory with a contingent role, and providing other women or women of color with your experiences. So we're doing something called community circles that are serving that purpose. And we're really excited about bringing contingent workers together across different organizations to share their experiences and to learn from each other.
I think that's just amazing, and just highlighting that it's a whole village effort, right? Yes, the managers need to kind of be held responsible for some of this stuff, but as suppliers, how can we better support the talent that we're sending out, or provide those resources? As MSPs, how can we advise those clients and maybe have something that's a little bit more company wide, where there isn't an amazing team that if you're on this team, you're in and you're going to be great, but there's another team that's kind of falling short, and helping that company look at data holistically, and where things are maybe not working, and provide better support. Now, we've got all of these drivers, and we've looked at all of them and what is important to the contingent workforce. How do we look to the future? What does the future look like in taking these things into consideration and now supporting moving forward, Pam?
Well, we really looked at career optimism, a sense of optimism, looking at, how people felt about overall optimism for achieving their career goals as a contingent worker, and also achieving their ideal work situation. And overall, we see levels of optimism on contingent workers possess for the future of their work and careers varies across demographics. Black contingent workers scored the highest, about a 71, followed closely by Hispanic and Latino professionals at about a 69. So really, there was a general sense of optimism that this kind of a career would work, at least in the near term, across the next year or so, and potentially transitioning, sometimes not, across a 5-year time period.
Cool. And Chandra, what do you see like in the future for RISE and project-based work? How are we factoring this in? What do we see on the horizon from your perspective?
I think companies are valuing diversity. They're understanding that we need this work-life integration. They're offering flexible options if you want moms, if you want women of color in the workplace. And then they're also appreciating the unique backgrounds of all of these women who are transitioning and moving from one industry to another. So I see the future of work as being non-traditional, because I'm a non-traditional person myself. But I honestly believe more companies are welcoming new thoughts, new ideas, and the new way of work.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And how do we, go ahead, Rebecca.
Yeah, I was just going to add and say that, the optimism that the contingent workforce has is just really inspiring. And we're seeing that the diverse segments, our Hispanic, Latino, Latin groups, our Black and female groups, they are optimistic about this. They want to recommend contingent work to others, to their network, to their friends. So it's a growing segment, and we see that from businesses, from CFOs, from the C-suite in our clients, as well as now from the contingent workers themselves, that they do recommend this work. But I'll just reiterate as we kind of wrap up here that it's about a partnership. It's about a partnership with organizations like RISE and the Mom Project, and finding those good organizations that want to do this work and support these workers with findings like we have in this research project.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I said it before, I'll say it again. This was so in depth, and I am just so appreciative of WerkLabs, of Pro Unlimited, Chandra, of RISE for just taking such a refined view on a topic that's so important in how we support and what matters to the contingent workforce. So thank you everyone for being a part of today's panel. To our participants, if you have any questions for anyone on this panel, please feel free to drop them in the chat box. And we have a few minutes, so we're going to take some time for a bit of Q&A. So
I know, I see some good ones. There was lots of wonderful conversation happening in the chat, which always is exciting.
Okay, so Laurie Norris asks a question for the panel. How would we define contingent contractor? Well, sorry, I lost it. And temp work. Are these different, or are they one and the same? I'll let the MSP answer, Rebecca.
Well, if anybody feel free to add on, but I'll say that I kind of view it as an external workforce. So we have full-time workers, and then we have everyone that's kind of outside of that full-time traditional worker. And there's a lot of different types of roles that fit into that. And it actually depends on the organization, on the company, of how they define that contingent contractor, temp worker, of what they put in that category. But to me and to our organization, we really consider anyone that's outside of that full-time category. When I think about the focuses of diversity, equity, and inclusion for the contingent workforce, I focus more on the ones that were mentioned here. So contingent, that contractor, the temp worker, because they're likely to not feel a part of another company. So if we think about like consultants or consulting firms, they have their own culture, they're supported, they have their own career path. And so we want them, you naturally feel a little included with your client, but it's not as much of a focus or a priority for our organization. We really want to support those workers who kind of feel a part of the client, but kind of don't, and they're at this odd place. How can we help support them? And how can we make sure that they have these aspects we've mentioned today, right? That inclusion and the ability to succeed, the belonging, all of those aspects. But it's kind of anybody who's non-traditional to round out that question.
Pam, would you agree from a research standpoint, that's kind of the how you define this workspace in your research?
Yeah, we talk about the extended workforce, and I was thinking as Rebecca was talking, there's just so many different ways that this is defined. It was actually one of the things that we were thinking about when we were designing this survey is how many different ways you can say this. And as Rebecca said, it's kind of dependent on the organization as well as how contingent workers choose to talk about this.
Thank you. Thanks for the question, Laurie. All right. What about gaps in your resume if you do contingent work? That's what I'm worried about. And I feel like I would be searching for other jobs the entire time and not be focused.
I could just kick that off and say that a lot of times contingent work can also be part of a resume. The experiences and skills that you get as doing contingent work can really be a great part of resume fodder. It's working independently, it's working autonomously, it's taking on responsibilities, it's finding your own contracts. All of that can be put into a resume succinctly, but it can really be part of those experiences. Similarly, we tell moms too who have taken gaps in paid employment because they were staying at home that a lot of the skills, the balancing, the juggling, defined in a certain way can also be put. We often call them mom-baticals. You put those into your resume in the right way, and employers will take notice. They're distinguishing characteristics that make you special and unique. So a lot of times it's really in the framing of those that can help. Also, I will say that gaps in the resume are not quite as detrimental as they used to be. There's a certain expectation that those things happen that we may not have seen as much a decade ago. So I will say that too. But I would encourage you to include contingent labor and other experiences, non-paid as well, to make that part of a resume.
And I'm not sure, it might, maybe this is from my own experience of being in the contingent workforce myself, but it could be that you're referring to if in between projects you have gaps. And I would say that naturally happens for people who are in contingent workforce, maybe not as much as they might like, to be honest, especially now when it's such a hot job market. You might have jobs back to back to back. It's probably unlikely that you would have those gaps. But if they are in there, what I have found that most people have done is you have you're almost your own business. So even if you don't have a project, you are learning, you're building your craft, you're developing skills for the next piece. And so you are a contractor, and you say contractor from this year to this year. And yeah, there might be a couple of months in between some of those, but you're doing work in that, right? You are developing yourself during that time. You're looking for another role. And so oftentimes when there are gaps in contracting roles, I don't see employers or hiring managers feeling at all negative about that, because it makes sense in the work that you're doing. And if it's a contingent workforce career path, those are naturally going to be there. So it's something not to worry about that piece of it.
Yeah.
Do you find that there are certain industries that have more opportunities for contingent workers, and there are better systems in place to support contingent workers? I would say yes. Rebecca, what are you guys seeing over at Pro?
Yeah, I think all industries are getting better and better at having this in place, because it is becoming a part of the overall talent strategy, which is why it also needs to be in the D&I strategy as well, as an aside. But if it's part of that overall strategy, they're putting that in place. So we're seeing it much more so. It used to be primarily IT was very well set up for it. And now we're seeing it in really across all industries. We're seeing it in HR, we're seeing it in back office, we're seeing it in finance roles. I mean, really across the board, utilizing that talent, because it is more flexible, right? That person might be redeployed for several, but also it could be an opportunity to have them come full-time, but there's so much more flexibility with the contingent workforce than there is with that full-time staff. So I would say the opportunities are across the board. So don't feel, if you're looking at the contingent workforce, that there's only one industry, and I would guess that it's primarily IT that you might have been thinking is better set up for it.
And Chandra, are you seeing anything different, or any call outs that you want to make working with these RISE participants who are going into contingent workforce or looking to pivot? Where are they finding most of their opportunities from your experience?
Honestly, they're finding the best opportunities, the remote opportunities, the full-time and the contingent opportunities in either tech or healthcare. Healthcare, benefits, all those companies that are offering these things, such as Anthem and all those other companies, have work from home policies. They also have female leaders, so they understand what a woman needs in the workplace. And so there are many different contingent opportunities that I'm seeing that our ladies are getting hired in either tech or the healthcare space.
Cool. Nancy Drinker asks, how do you help a contractor feel like they belong without crossing the line or implying a longer term relationship? That is co-employment right there.
I feel like we need a lawyer here. We should have had somebody else on our panel to talk about that. The next webinar will be with that, because I always have to put on the hat that I am not legal counsel. But I can start us off, and then I think, Pam, you might be able to add as well. But I feel like it's all about that transparency and the communication. So as long as it's clear that something is a contract role, then you can still create that sense of belonging, right? Communicate the values. You can work with your partners, right? That's why I think we all keep emphasizing that partnership of the different groups, because it might not necessarily be completely on the organization and the hiring manager, but them utilizing their partners in the right way to be able to do this. So the examples I gave of what Pro is doing as we help our clients manage their contingent workforce, we're providing it. And so they know that the company is supporting it, that the client wants this done. So there's that creation of investment in them as a contingent worker, but we're the ones doing it. So that not only is that that low employment risk, but also so that it doesn't feel like a bait and switch to this worker, that the company has said all these things and then, oh, wait, I'm gone in 6 months. It's more, we're providing it as a managed service provider with our clients. So I think there's still delineation there, but that you're still supporting them as human beings, as people, as talent that's contributing to the company's success, because it can be 40% of the workforce. So let's support them. So I think there's lots of ways to do that. And to me, the biggest piece is the partnership.
Right. And including them in conversations that are relevant to the work that they're doing, so that they're, not finding out secondhand, thirdhand that decisions were made that they weren't included, and asking their opinion. Some of the contractors that we talked to just wanted to be considered a voice in the conversation. And even in, some things that might not be directly related to that contract, people aren't in person as much anymore, but the idea that, people were grabbing lunch together, having coffee together, just little things like that made them feel like part of a team, if only temporarily, it still makes people feel like they belong and like they're included and like they're valued. Very simple things can make a big difference.
Awesome.
You're exactly right.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone. I want to thank, again, this incredible panel for being here today, and also thank all of our attendees for joining us. As a reminder to all of you, we will be sending out a recording of the webinar along with the full report that was referenced by the panel, and a brief survey for you to fill out to help us with our future events. Feel free to contact any of our panelists on LinkedIn, reach out if you have any questions about any of these topics, and also feel free to reach out to us if you did have a question in the chat that didn't get answered. Eileen, is there contingent work for attorneys? You bet there is. We're seeing a whole lot of it. But thank you, everyone. Thank you, panelists. And we're looking forward to some great conversation that's going to spark from this. So bye, everyone.
Thanks so much. Bye.